The best of Australian Real Estate Convention, conceived to showcase Australia's real estate industry to the rest of the world, where everyone can meet personally with world real estate leaders and masters in their fields. For the first time ever that the speakers have stayed for the entire convention and interacted with the delegates to impart their wealth of knowledge.
My name is John Pring and I've flown for 36 hours from London, England to be with the best in Australian real estate practitioners at this wonderful conference. I'm also here to tell the audience, you, the estate agents, how we sell properties in the United Kingdom.
It's all about thinking outside the box. It's those questions that remain unanswered. Do infants enjoy infancy as much as adults enjoy adultery? These are the kind of questions you got to ask. Do illiterate people really get the full benefit of alphabet soup? There are some things that we may never know. And just what it's like real estate in England. We have John Pring over there, from chairman of Fisks Real Estate in England, and they do things very differently to what we do over here. But there's probably something you can learn if you just think outside the box a little bit. Think out a little bit about what you're doing now and maybe how you can apply what you're about to hear. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please welcome Mr. John Pring.
Thank you, Doctor. Well, good afternoon. Now that's a really UK, British way to greet people after lunch. Now, of course, the Americans just say hi, and I guess as I'm in Australia, I ought to say good day. Thank you, thank you. Now, what I'd like to do is, firstly, I want to spend a couple of minutes just introducing myself to you. My name is John Pring. I am an estate agent. I still sell houses for a living. My business is in South Essex, which is 35 miles east of London. We have an office in the new financial centre that has been created in London, Canary Wharf, where all the financial houses now operate out of in their big tower blocks. And that business focuses only on lettings. And I've been an estate agent all of my life. I left school, didn't know what to do. I became an estate agent, and I think that's fairly common in life. I think people end up in this business not knowing necessarily that they wanted to make a career of it. I've made a career of it, but it wasn't my original career choice because I didn't have one. Now, why am I here? Before I actually go through my presentation, what I'd like to do, with your permission, will be just to pick up on a couple of points that I thought the really great speakers this morning touched upon. And everybody can always take something out of a presentation. And I don't know about you, but I was scribbling away, writing notes, and I thought there was a couple of really, really good points. One of them I'm going to implement when I go back. And I made a note because I thought that 10-day call prior to completion was a really brilliant idea. It's so simple. My own business doesn't do that. We write to them. We write to both the buyer and the seller. But that 10-day phone call, I made a note about that, and I'm going to implement that. And what's important about these events is that we actually take something back and do it. It's not about just being here and listening. At the end of the day, the only thing that matters, it doesn't matter about the quality of the speaker, it doesn't matter about all this magic stuff that makes this room look pretty. The only thing that matters is actually doing it. Now, I have to say to you that I'm a baby boomer. I mean, I fitted into that category, Julie's category. But I also tell you the truth, I am 15 years younger. Now, this is the agenda I want to work through this afternoon, and I'm really conscious that I've got to keep on time, and I've already slipped. Now, why am I here? Well, I've been very fortunate in my life. I've had an opportunity at looking at how real estate is conducted elsewhere in the world. And when Ian told me he was going to put this convention on, and congratulations to Ian, because I wanted to do a similar thing in the UK. Have I ever done it? No, I haven't. So all power for Ian to actually doing it. Well done, Ian. So I'm here because Ian and I have become friends. Ian comes to the UK, tells us how to advertise. Do we do anything about it? No, we don't. But it's always nice to see him. And Ian said, I'm going to put this convention on, and I'm going to have all these Australians and New Zealanders and the Southern Hemisphere salespeople, because we want to showcase to the world the best of Australia. And he said, this is supposed to be a fun convention. And I said, but I don't tell jokes, and I don't tell jokes. I'm hopeless at telling jokes. I'm good at selling houses, but I'm really hopeless at telling jokes. Now, and he said, no, don't worry about that. I want you to tell everybody in the audience about the UK model, how we do business in the UK, because they'll just all fall about laughing. Now, I don't know whether you will or not, but what I am grateful for is that you've all bothered to come back into this room, because it's such a lovely day out there and with such beautiful surroundings. I thought that I'd be talking to a collection of empty round tables. So thank you very much for coming back. Now, what are the estate agency issues? I'm going to quickly touch upon those. UK market and how our industry sets itself up. The UK sales process and what I think we can learn about that. Because one of the things that worried me was simply, what benefit would you get from this 60 minutes that we've got together? You've all come here, you've travelled. Okay, it's a nice view, but you do actually want to get some benefit from the various speakers' presentations. And although I can tell you about the UK market, I understand that you're estate agents in New Zealand and Australia, and I'm not absolutely sure. What I'm going to say is how it's going to relate to you and how you can actually put that into your business to make your business better. And I guess all I would say to you is that if you just look at the top line, the really broad principles of what I say, and use that as the starting point in analysing what you do and how you do it, well, I'm certainly not asking you to adopt anything I say, because the models are different. I just want you to focus on that and see whether there is anything in there that you could do slightly differently by learning from how other industries operate. And it doesn't matter whether we're talking about the UK or whether you travel to America and look at their model, there is always something you can take from it. So that's what I want to try and achieve in my 60 minutes. This is my first message. People are the same the world over. And how do I know that? Look at the front tables. Nobody ever wants to sit in the front tables. Our clients, our buyers and sellers, they are the same the world over. They all have the same issues. Our buyers and sellers in the UK have the same issues that you do in New Zealand and in Australia. People are worried. What are they worried about? They're worried about how they're going to educate their children. They're going to worry about, are they going to be made redundant? They're going to worry about, is my wife or is my husband going to divorce me? They're worried about, where's the money coming from to actually look after me in my old age? People's concerns, it doesn't matter, I believe, what country you're in. The public, the people we deal with, their concerns are the same the world over. Now, Gary's presentation this morning, word for word, could have been delivered in England, and people would have got something from it. Gary's presentation here, word for word, you got something from it. Gary comes from Canada. People are the same the world over. Equally, business principles are the same the world over. And I've just put some up on the screen. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on them, but look after existing clients. That message is common. Take a critical look at your business. In other words, go away from your business and look into your business as though you were a consumer. Every good business person does that. Every good real estate person does that. It doesn't matter what country you're in. Value your best employees. Statement of the obvious. Don't cut your marketing spend. But the caution to that is, make sure you find out where the results are coming from. What part of your marketing dollars actually are producing income for your business by generating inquiry. Use technology. Whether we like it or not, technology is here to stay. We've just all got to learn to use technology, but use it just as a tool. And then this magic phrase that every single speaker has to almost obligatory trot out, work smarter and not harder. Now that's a UK list, but I'm sure it applies to you as well. There are three key estate agency issues. as I see it. Now, these are UK issues, but having just listened to what I've said, I hope you will agree that they will and can, in fact, impact on the way you do business here. Consumerism. Just as much as technology is here to stay, consumerism is here to stay. And I'm saying to you, don't be afraid of it. Embrace it. Get it on your side. Don't be the agent that moans about your clients, your buyers, your sellers, your public. Actually embrace consumerism and make sure that you offer the public service, the quality of service that will make the public come back to you time and time again. That's all I mean by embracing consumerism. And I certainly don't mean falling over, bending over backwards just because a buyer or seller said, do this or that. What I mean, it's a broader concept. Just make sure that you're looking after your buyers and sellers and that you're delivering what they want. Now, I'm saying that first phrase up there on that slide, consumerism is here to stay, is true in whichever country a business is run in. It's not going to go away. And I want to spend a couple of minutes, because I'm fairly sure that you don't have this here. In the UK, we have ombudsmen. Do you have ombudsmen here? Someone quickly? Yes? No? You've heard of the term? In the UK, we've created, on a voluntary basis, the industry has created an ombudsman for estate agents. Now, I don't think you have one in Australia, and I don't think you have one in New Zealand. On the tables, I've left some information about the UK Ombudsman Scheme. It's a great tool. Some UK agents didn't join, and originally they said, why give the public another stick to beat us with? What a negative attitude. The Ombudsman thing is a really good thing the Ombudsman scheme is a really good thing to be able to say to your buyers and sellers. Mr. Seller, we've got all these service standards that we set out and we say we're going to do for you. Now, in the very unlikely event, because we are human and we're not 100%, but in the very unlikely event that we do foul up, we are members of the Estate Agents Ombudsman Scheme. We have a formal complaints procedure. If you don't like what we're saying, having been through this complaints procedure, we will support you. We will support you, this is the point, in taking your complaint to the Ombudsman. Now, the 2% of the guys that we said just ignore them, don't work with them, well, maybe you sign up with one of these 2% people before you realise how difficult they were and you should have ditched them and you're already involved in a transaction and therefore you can't ditch them. The transaction completes, but they're the people that eat into your time. You didn't do this right. What are you going to do about it? I want some money back. I think it's disgraceful. If you belong to the Ombudsman Scheme for estate agents in the UK, and you get a complaint, you go through your complaints procedure. No, we don't think, Mr. Consumer, that your complaint is valid in this instance, but if you don't like this decision, go to the Ombudsman. The file leaves your desk, it goes to the Ombudsman's office, and I have to tell you, most of the complaints are upheld in the agent's favour. Some of the complaints are dealt with prior to the formal hearing with a small check, and some of the complaints are more serious and the firm should be penalised. And I would say, as a property professional that sells houses for a living, why shouldn't these guys that really screw up and give the profession a bad name be penalised? So I see the Ombudsman Scheme as a really positive approach in life, and I do believe it indicates how you can embrace consumerism. And so I would hope that the message from me today on this would be to go out there, lobby your institutions, lobby your professional bodies and say, why don't we actually set something up in Australia and New Zealand? Now, the second issue is information technology, and I'm not going to spend any time on this at all because Julie covered it really brilliantly this morning. What I would say, though, don't bury your head in your sand about technology and think carefully about how you're going to spend the money, because it's ever so easy just to throw money at technology. You've got to figure out what the returns to your business is going to be, but don't ignore technology. And then government legislation is the third thing. We all know that governments like to interfere. I'm saying to you that there's a challenge in every country that has a sophisticated real estate market about government legislation. We have a huge issue in the UK. I know that you've had issues in the past in Australia and New Zealand. It's one of these issues that we've always got to confront. So I believe that the three key estate agency issues that I've identified in the UK is applicable here. One of the things that I asked for before coming here was stats in terms of what the marketplace is. And that's a slide that shows the number of transactions in the United Kingdom, excluding Scotland. They have a different system in Scotland, different law. But in England and Wales, they're the number of properties that have been sold in the UK, and it's not going up. And that's the point I want to just leave you with. There, New Zealand. I just don't understand how you can run a sophisticated real estate market in New Zealand on only 104,000 transactions in any 1 year. But they do, and they're really skilled at doing it. I'm not going to, because I'm in Australia, I didn't collect the Australian facts and stats because I guess you know them for yourself. Quickly, UK, 60 million people, about 2 million tenants. 50% of those tenants are managed by agents. 70% owner occupation. There is some social housing, but not very much. And that changed because of Mrs. Thatcher. She gave council house tenants the right to buy their property from local authorities. So that's one of the reasons our marketplace changed. Now, the industry, and I know you're going to find this difficult to believe, the industry is unlicensed. Anybody can be an estate agent in the United Kingdom. You can be a bricklayer one day and an estate agent the next day. You could be a computer engineer one day and an estate agent the next day. Now, that's also true for owning the business. There is no formal licensing in the UK. So therefore, we don't know how many companies there are, nor does the government, or how many offices there are. I mean, I guess we could count yellow pages, and that's what the government does. No one knows. The best guess is between 12,000 and 14,000, which is split 40% corporate, 60% independent. And there are no major franchise presence in the UK as yet. Century 21 have launched about 5 times, Remax has launched about 3 times, and they're having a bit of a stab at it this time. But there isn't a major franchise presence in the UK. What we do have, and I know this is a difficult concept for you to understand, what we do have is a licensing system that says anybody can be an estate agent. The government's keen on competition, and competition keeps commission down, which is what I'm here to talk about. But if you do something wrong, in other words, if you break the law, then the Office of Fair Trading can ban you from being an estate agent. Does it work? No, it doesn't, because the Office of Fair Trading's department isn't sufficiently staffed, they don't have resource, and they only manage to ban 5 or 6 people a year. And it just doesn't work. But it's a total free entry. Service levels, I think, compared to some of the things that I've seen throughout the world, are very poor. We are a telesales industry, but we're a volume marketplace, million transactions, no one has dominance. And I think there is a trade-off between efficiency and customer service. We are a volume sales market with very few salespeople. We're totally opposite the New Zealand model, totally opposite the American model, and I think more akin to what I would call the Australian model, the Australian employment pattern within offices. Commission levels, multi-agency, these are my own firm's commission levels. Multi-agency we discourage, sole agency is 2%. The industry is anywhere between 0.5 and 2.5. In our local area, we compete with people who regularly advertise for 1%, and our bottom end is 1.5, and I suggest that 1.5 is the top end of our competitors' scale of commission charges. And you've got to remember, this is an all-in fee. The business pays for everything. The seller does not pay for anything. Now, if that's not frightening enough, as far as you're concerned, I mean, I don't know anything different, therefore I'm not frightened. The magic phrase in the UK is subject to contract. Now, have you all heard, I mean, you travel and you've been to the UK, everywhere I go, I'm told, oh yeah, you're the agent that doesn't do anything for your money, and you just hand out details and this, that, and the other, and there's an element of truth in that. And the other thing that everybody wants to talk about is gazumping. They can't understand how an agreed sale, the price can go up or down, and gazundering is the other horrible word that has been introduced into this. So gazumping means the price goes up, gazundering means the price goes down. And people just don't understand how that can happen. And Ian suggested that even though it's not applicable to your businesses, you just might like to know how a transaction works in the UK. And I didn't know really how to do this, so I've created a hypothetical transaction which I want you to talk you through, and it's going to take about 15 minutes, and you are going to need to concentrate. Now, I know it's after lunch, and I know this is the graveyard session. Is that something you've heard of here before, after lunch, the graveyard session? Okay, well, you've still got to concentrate. Now, the point about this is that the magic phrase, subject to contract. I sell you a house. Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Brown. Do the deal. I haven't sold you a house at all. We'll talk about the house being sold, but it isn't. It's not sold until there's a contract. In the UK, just as anywhere else in the world, a contract is a contract. And once you've got a contract, the price is fixed. The only difference is that in the UK, that contract comes at the end of the transaction, not the beginning. And that's the confusion. So when people talk about they've bought and sold a house, they haven't bought and sold a house. And that's the problem. So all of our deals are subject to contract. All the correspondence says subject to contract, which means that anybody can change their mind at any time. Now, this is a UK chain. It's a fictional UK chain, but it's genuine in so much as there are circumstances that have happened. Now, Mr. and Mrs. 1, they decide to move. They've got a baby on the due coming along, and they've got a one-bedroom flat, and they need better accommodation, and they're going to buy a two-bedroom terrace house through Fisks, great, from a Mr. and Mrs. 2. Mr. and Mrs. 2 have found a four-bedroom detached house. They're moving out of their two-bedroom terraced home for a four-bedroom home. That's what people do, and I'm sure that's what people do here. They want to improve themselves. They want to get it bigger and better. So they've bought a four-bedroom detached house owned by Mr. and Mrs. 3. Now, they might have bought that house before or after we introduced the ones, but that doesn't matter as far as this story is concerned. The point is, we've got a sale. Mr. and Mrs. 3 are retiring to the coast. That's what people do. They take their nice four-bedroom house and they retire to the coast when they come to retirement age. And they've bought a little bungalow from Mrs. 4. Now, unfortunately, Mrs. 4's deceased, but her grandchildren have done really well because the proceeds have been left to her four grandchildren. So Miss 5 is going to get £50,000. Miss 5, who's got a reasonable job but couldn't afford to buy a house, are you following all this? Has bought a one-bedroom flat because she's got the income, she didn't have the deposit. She's now got the deposit. So she's bought a flat in East London so she can commute to work easily from a Mr. 6. Now, Mr. 6 wants a bigger flat, so he's bought a two-bedroom flat from an investor who wants to get out from the top end of the market and take his capital. An empty property, so the chain is over. We've got an empty property. Hooray! Now, we've got to go downwards now, because remember, my original Mr. 1 that we sold that terraced house to, he needs to sell to buy. So we get him a buyer. And his buyer is Mr. 8, who's getting divorced. His wife has gone to Spain with a window cleaner. She just wants the cash. No problems there. He owns a nice three-bedroom semi. He's a bit fed up. He's got to leave his nice three-bedroom semi, and he's lost his wife and got to go into a one-bedroom flat. But I guess that's just how life is. So we've now got a three-bedroom semi we have to sell. And because I don't want this to go on all afternoon, and I'm sure you don't want either, I've ended the chain there because we've sold Mr. 8 to an investor, who we'll call Mr. 9, and we've got another empty property. So what have we got? Going up. There it is on the screen. And there's our original Mr. and Mrs. 1 that started this whole story. And that's what it looks like going down. And there we have it. 8 properties, 9 people. No contracts, ladies and gentlemen. We have just statements of intent. Heads of terms, if you want to put it in a business terminology. And what happens is, all these agents have negotiated the sales, Fisks negotiate the sales that we're involved in at the bottom end of the chain, and the solicitors then handle the transaction. And all of those contracts are going to be formally exchanged on the same day, at the same time, by the lawyers. Not the agents, by the lawyers. Once we've got this statement of intent from a buyer and a seller, which in effect means agreeing price, we send this stuff off to the lawyers, and the lawyers do the contractual and the conveyancing process. Now, I know that that doesn't happen here. And managing that is an art form. It's not a science, it's an art form. Because we're in a people business, and that's exactly what that's all about. Because that's probably a 3 or 4 month gap in some of those transactions for people. Might even be longer than that in a big chain like that. And you know how life is. Circumstances get in the way of things. And we have to simply look after our element of the chain and keep the personalities happy with all the things that can go wrong. And I don't have to tell you what can go wrong in a housing transaction because you do it every day of your life. Now, just to use that example, Mr. and Mrs. 3, who bought this nice little bungalow on the coast from the deceased lady's estate, at the last minute, all this chain is ready to go, this magic phrase, exchange contracts. At the last minute, their solicitor suddenly thinks, oh, I'm going to be negligent if I haven't advised them to have a survey. So he advises them to have a survey. Everybody thinks the chain is about to exchange. Surveyor is instructed. The surveyor looks at the empty property. Oh, well, maybe the roof's a bit iffy, and I think they're paying a bit over the odds for this. So the surveyor writes a report because he doesn't want to be sued either. And what happens? Mr. and Mrs. 3 sit down and they look at the report they've just spent £500 on. Oh, well, maybe we shouldn't have offered as much money as that. Maybe we're paying too much. So Mr. and Mrs. 3 start renegotiating their price on their purchase. And that is a really classic example of how things can go wrong. Now, Mr. and Mrs. 3 surveyor recommended that they were overpricing their purchase by £7,500. Mr. and Mrs. 3 want £7,500 off the purchase price. Now, in that instance, because it's an estate sale, which I picked, I guess it's not a huge difference. It's not going to affect Miss 5's 50 grand inheritance, and if it does, it can only be by £1,000 or so. But you take that circumstance away, that 7.5 grand might be fundamental to the next purchases up the line, and everybody has to start renegotiating their prices. Now, does that make sense to you? Not in the sense that you think it's sensible, but in the sense that you understand in the UK, nothing is certain until the contracts are exchanged. Now, what is really interesting about this No. The question was, are contracts exchanged on the same day as settlement? Settlement we call completion. Now, when I started in this business all these years ago, it used to be 28 days. It's now more likely to be 14, could be a week, and it is possible to complete on the same day, but in a big chain like that, you wouldn't. And one of my homework for you is, forget about estate agency, just think in terms, I've explained the scenario, we've got 8 contracts that have to be exchanged simultaneously to be legally binding, and they are exchanged simultaneously. If anybody can tell me how that's done before this conference ends, I'll give them a bottle of wine. And that is another subject altogether, but I need another half an hour for that, and I know I haven't got it, so I'm going to motor on. Our definition of a sale, therefore, is price agreed, solicitors instructed, and a completed chain downwards. We'll take our chances on the chain going upwards. Now, what do UK agents do or not do? I mean, over lunch, I've already heard what you think that we don't do, and I think that you're probably right. What does a typical UK office look like? Well, I tell you this, I think that we are very good at being reactive. I think business comes to the office, and somehow or other we've trained the public to come to us. Now, I know the net is slightly altering that model, but now the electronic inquiries come to us, but business still generally comes to us. But I do think that we handle it very efficiently, but efficiency comes at a price in terms of customer service. Sales production per office in the UK is about 75 to 100 units a year, and that means actual transactions, not like the Americans that have two sides to every transaction. They're actual transactions. All buyers are serviced by the office. None of this, oh, that buyer belongs to consultant Fred and that buyer belongs to consultant Jane, and none of this parceling people up. A buyer is a buyer. The company doesn't care. We just want to service people. So all companies are serviced by the office. Company viewings. My own business, we do accompanied viewings. I can't put my hand on my heart and say we do them 100%, but as a general principle, one of our service statements is the fact we will do accompanied viewings. Generally speaking, that means taking the person to the house. You know, you as salespeople take people to the houses. Generally speaking, in the UK, that does not happen. We do not, as an industry, take people to the home unless we've got a key. Then, of course, we have to. But generally speaking, people conduct their own viewings. Open homes, they do happen in the UK, not as much as out here. I'm very keen on them. The internet is absolutely crucial in handling buyers, but Julie's told you all about that this morning, so I'm not going to worry about that. Boards, the industry is the same the world over. Boards are really important. And advertising, and I'm not saying advertising isn't important, although I am saying the internet runs it at a close run thing nowadays. And I can certainly tell you my own business, where we track where we get our inquiries from. 2/3 of our business comes from the internet, and 1/3 comes from newspaper advertising. So I'm sorry about that for the main sponsor of this event. We are keen on branding. A couple of people have mentioned branding this morning. That's a photograph of the office, in fact, that I work out of. Another thing that surprised someone over lunch is we provide salespeople with motor cars, and we take the opportunity to brand them as well. If we've got a car running around the town, we didn't used to do this, we've done this in the last 2 years. If we've got a car running around the town, why not have our name on it? What does a typical UK office look like? Well, not, I think, dissimilar to an Australian office, truthfully. You've got a manager or business owner, a couple of property consultants, one of which will definitely be a lister. Is that the phrase that you're used to here? A lister, the person that takes the listing? There'll be an admin person or secretary. I think the fundamental difference is the office does work as a team. And then we have this commission debate. Should these salespeople share the commission on the total office turnover, or is it personally based? And you can argue, I could argue for and against on that, but I guess you'll understand my belief when I tell you that my own business is run on individual commissions. Now, the title of this talk, which Ian set me, and I said that I'd come out here and talk about, I really said to Ian that I'd do whatever he wanted me to do. So when I looked at the website, I see that I'm supposed to be talking about profiting in a low-fee environment. Interestingly enough, and I read a paper on the plane. It came in just a couple of days before I was due to get here, from an organisation that analyses businesses. And they analysed the top 2,000 companies in the UK. And I found this really depressing, bearing in mind that I'm supposed to be here talking about profiting in a low-fee environment, that 26% of their 2,000 company sets of accounts that they analysed, from a financial point of view, were in, as they described, the danger zone. They won't be here next year. And 14% were in the, inverted commas, caution zone. And I have to tell you, it is difficult to profit in a low-fee environment. It is difficult. And the only way you can do it, and I'm going to spend about 60 minutes talking about this, I guess, but the only way you can really do it, it's really simple. I could have done it in a sentence. It's got to be volume. If you're in a low-fee environment, the only justification for that, in terms of running a business, is you've got to be a volume business. So how do we make this business profitable in volume terms? Working as a team. Sales volume. You've got to use systems. You've got to use your technology for the benefit of the business. Now, the major firms in the UK, and there's one outfit, one PLC company that owns 1,200 outlets, 1,200 offices, operating under 10 different brands. The major volume brands in that conglomerate of a business, they don't have any computers at all, but they still manage to be really successful operating on systems and bits of paper. Now, they will clearly be forced to adopt technology. But I'm not saying that just because computers can do all these whizzy things, what we all do hasn't really changed. It just focuses on people. Now, the other way you can make a profit is, of course, not paying large salaries. And I have to admit, I think the UK business, in terms of a state agency, people are poorly paid. The reason they're poorly paid is because there isn't huge profit levels to pay them out with. Pay peanuts, get monkeys. I'm sure you've heard that phrase. It's a very young industry, sort of like 19 to 25 would be the average age of a salesperson, because 19 to 25-year-olds don't need so much basic salary. But the point I would like to make, though, is if you train monkeys, and you can train people, trained monkeys equal profit. And it is about systems. And we are very much a telesales industry. Bolt-on sales, what would I mean by that is what else can you do in terms of your business to generate other income sources? Use the internet, limited budget. We don't spend much on advertising. We don't have the money to. We pay for all the advertising ourselves. I think it's really great what you do here and go out and get it from your clients, get it from the vendors, but we pay for all of the advertising ourselves, and therefore our advertising spend is not great. But whatever you do spend on advertising, I'm reinforcing the message, you've got to focus on what those advertising dollars are producing for you. Office locations are important because we're very much a high street business, we're a retailer, and good people will always do good business though. Now, if you've got good people and a really great location, then you've got a super business. Without a great location, a good person will still have a good business. Boards. Everybody does know how important boards are, surely, for goodness. Boards, the public judge us by the amount of boards they see. In the UK, the public doesn't relate to individual salespeople as they do in Australia and New Zealand. The public relates to the brand, they relate to the office. Other income sources, agencies, selling life insurance and mortgages, there's an income stream for that. Lettings and management, I know that's really big in Australia, but it is another source of income which supports the office. International sales are very big in the UK because of the weather, close to Europe, close to Spain, Portugal, Cyprus. International sales are an important sector of the market, and there are big referral commissions to be earned from international sales. Solicitor recommendations. Solicitors pay us to send them clients. I don't know whether that happens here or not, but it is another source of income for the office. Now, I'm going to summarise in a minute, but before I do so, one of the things that cropped up over lunch, and it's partially why I've rushed this a bit, because I want to get this story in before I get thrown off. One of the things that cropped up over lunch was that people seemed to be surprised, at best, that in the UK we don't actually show people homes. Oh, some firms don't. Fisks we do, but some firms don't. And we are a telesales industry. And then I went on to say something else, which was it's quite possible to buy a house in the UK and you not ever meet the person you bought the house from. Now, does that surprise you? I mean, it certainly surprised people over lunch. I thought I'd try to explain that. And anyway, I think, having thought about it quickly, I can do that in a couple of minutes, is to actually explain what happens. So I'm in my office, and the phone rings. Mr. Brown, thank you. By the way, remember what we were saying about listing and the importance of finding out, it was the referral thing, about has someone referred you to the office, to me? That's a really good question to ask, and it should be at the beginning of the conversation. What I would also add to that was the first thing you should ever say when you're answering that phone is, thank you for calling me. Thank you for calling me, Mr. Brown. How can I help you? Well, this is what the guy said. He said, I've been on your website and I see this house in Rosebery Avenue, 123 Rosebery Avenue, and I'd like to view it Saturday afternoon. And I'd like to view it at 3 o'clock. Can I just check that the right house we're talking about, it is 126 and the prices are £250,000? And he said, yeah, that's the one. Fine. Can I just have your contact number, Mr. Brown? Yeah, that's great. I've got that. I'll ring the owner and I'll come straight back to you. 3 o'clock, Saturday afternoon. Yep, great. Phone down, quickly on the phone to the owner. Hello, Mr. Seller. Got really good news for you. I've got a Mr. Brown that wants to view your house. He would like to come round 3 o'clock Saturday afternoon. Is that going to be okay with you? No, are you going to be out? What time will you be back? Conversation with wife. Oh, I'll be back at 4 o'clock. Oh, that's great. We'll set this appointment up at 4 o'clock, Mr. Seller. It will be a Mr. Brown that's coming round. And I won't call you back unless there's any change in these arrangements. Phone down. Hello, Mr. Brown. Very pleased to say that the seller would love to see you. However, he can't make 3 o'clock, but could you make 4 o'clock? Yes, I can. Brilliant. Look forward to talking to you again. Thanks very much. Okay, Mr. Brown goes round, views the house, goes away. Now, in the UK, a really well-organised office would have phoned Mr. Brown probably at some stage with luck, maybe Monday. This was a Saturday afternoon. Just really to find out what Mr. Brown thought about the house. Well, in this instance, Mr. Brown is really keen. So he's on the phone, 9 o'clock Monday morning, rings the office, ring, ring. Good morning, Fisks, John Pring, how can I help you? Oh, Mr. Brown, I spoke to you. How did you get on at Rosebery Avenue? Loved it, loved it. Would like to buy it. Great. Oh, you want to make an offer? It was on at £250,000. You want to offer 235. Okay, I've got that. Number you're on? Super. I'll talk to the owner. Fine. Bye. Ring the owner. Oh, do you remember Mr. Seller? Do you remember Mr. Brown who came around Saturday? I've got some really good news for you. He wants to buy your house, but unfortunately it's not at the asking price, it's at 235. Not taking that. Well, conversation, what would you take? Well, we understand he's in a good position, because remember we would have pre-qualified him, but I didn't bore you with all that. And I'll take 240. Okay, I'll put it back to him. So I go back to Mr. Brown. Very great news for you. The seller, unfortunately, he hasn't accepted your offer, but he is prepared to come down and we'll agree at 240. And because my time is running out, we've agreed at 240. Instruct solicitors. Maybe there's a chain, maybe or not, but you'll have to assume that I've done all the proper things and I can tell everybody about everything. Instruct solicitors, and ultimately he exchanges contracts, and ultimately Mr. Brown moves in. And in this instance, because Mr. Brown got to know the owner quite well, we didn't even handle the keys. So Mr. Brown moves into his new house without the office ever meeting him, because he, remember, was an internet inquiry. He wasn't even a walk-in. And if even he had walked in, he'd probably dealt with the office secretary. So the salesperson didn't ever meet this guy. And that's why we're an efficient industry, because we deal with things over the phone and we don't have any contractual obligations. So we can handle large volumes of transactions without getting involved too much with the people. Now, does that make sense now? Now, needless to say, at Fisks, we don't quite do it like that, because I've travelled the world and I've taken lots of good messages back. But that's how it happens. Now, I'm going to try and summarise now. Profiting in a low-fee environment, which is what I'm allegedly here to talk about. How are we going to do it? Well, firstly, we've got to be really efficient, reactive. I think we're really good at handling inquiry once we get it. We operate as a team. You can't do this in our sort of environment without having team players. Customer service. Although I've sort of mocked customer service a bit in terms of what we do in the UK, I think what we actually do, we do quite well. It's just we don't go on and do sufficient of all the other good things, and we can't do the other good things because there's not enough commission in it to enable us. And that's me defending the industry rather than telling you about Fisks. Consumerism. We have taken consumerism on board. and we make it work for us. I think we are efficient, I've said that already, and a good use of time. Okay, you might not like it, but I have to say, sending people around for the sellers to do the viewing is a good use of your time. I understand you don't get some well-qualified sellers and you can't build the relationship and all the nice things that I want to see happen, but you've got to admit it is a good use of time. Open homes is another good use of time. Branding is fundamental for this, remember. They're approaching the firm, not the individual salespeople. Advertising, you've got to advertise, whatever you do, whatever money you spend, you've got to make that advertising work. And finally, you use the ombudsman to refocus back on your customer service. And all those link together, which is what I've tried to do on that slide. But I think I have rushed that a bit, so I hope you haven't found it too difficult to absorb and I haven't gabbled too much. I know I'm a bit of an enthusiast, I do talk quickly. Not as quickly as Ian, I might add, who is the past master of fast talking.
Location, location, location. A world first, the premier showcase of Australia's real estate industry. The inaugural Best of Australian Real Estate Convention took place on Hamilton Island, alongside one of the world's finest natural wonders, Australia's Great Barrier Reef. Born from a dream to showcase Australia's real estate industry to the world, this convention gave delegates the opportunity to learn lots, to laugh like never before, and live it up together. They learnt from world-class international and local speakers with the unique opportunity of mixing personally with them throughout the convention and over lunch. They laughed with Australia's hottest corporate comedian, Mr. Scott Williams, the Doctor.
Take up that challenge, like the man who's only got one arm, yet still attempts to cartwheel. Causing grievous bodily harm.
The Best of Australian Real Estate Convention, a 3-day extravaganza of learning, laughing and living. Learning from some of the world's best real estate performers. Gary Hockey, President and CEO of Coldwell Banker Real Estate Franchise Group in Canada, explained how he led the entire group to achieve an incredible 98% customer satisfaction rating. Not bad, eh? And most importantly, maintained it year after year. Jim Reitzel is in the top 1% of North America's real estate achievers and the master of referrals, receiving over 500 personal referrals per year. How does he do it? The Best of Australian Real Estate Convention convener and international Mr. Real Estate Advertising, Ian Grace, showed everyone how to market properties directly to the key potential purchasers, and with his unique hoodoo system, how to design creative advertising by stepping away from the old traditional ways to reach for the emotions of the buyer. Christine Castle, an amazing achiever with 58 awards to her credit and First Lady President of the Real Estate Institute of New South Wales ever, delivered an insightful talk on women as leaders in real estate. Julie Ryan, the former National Training Director of LJ Hooker, is the only person outside of North America to be a member of the Cyber Professionals. Julie identified where the next generation's heads are at and how they'll buy and sell real estate in our future. John Pring is the Anglophile of UK real estate. He explained everything needed to know about how to sell real estate in the UK and how to profit in a low-fee environment. John is the chairman of the Fisks Group, a family name in Southeast Essex real estate. As the general manager of News Limited's community newspapers, David Swan gave us his personal editorial on the newspaper's close association with the real estate industry, both now and the future. Paula Irvine. As the Manager of Education and Training, Paula has guided the Real Estate Institute to become the largest provider of real estate training in New South Wales with their e-learning program breaking all records. She knows what the industry wants and showed how to embrace technology to make it work effectively. James Calianotis, only 36 and already co-founder of the Realway Franchise Group, previously purchased and then improved Queensland's auction department of Rain and Horn by a staggering 300%. Chris Matthews is the National Marketing Manager of RP Data, Australia and New Zealand's biggest information provider to the real estate industry. Chris enlightened delegates on future access to the vital information required by all successful agents to plan for their future. Mark Passmore is the quiet achiever, previously in the top 2% of Century 21 agents worldwide and the #1 real estate sales consultant in Western Australia for 5 years. Mark showed us his passion for his business and his unique and personal relationships with his clients, making him the one that everyone recommends. Yes, Scott Williams, also known as the Doctor, kept us in stitches with his inimitable sense of humour as the MC of the convention and star performer at the gala dinner.
So, tell you what we're going to do. Bernd, you are going to be the Angus Young of the group. You're going to be the AC/DC, the bad boy of rock and roll. You're the guitarist. I'm the man. I'll put that on there.
The Best of Australian Real Estate Convention, a world first, showcasing Australia's real estate industry to the world. And where else could you get to meet personally with the world's real estate leaders and masters in their fields? The first time ever that the speakers have stayed for the entire convention and interacted with the delegates to impart their wealth of knowledge. And yes, it's on again in 2007. So don't miss your chance to join us for the 2007 Best of Australian Real Estate Convention on the fabulous Gold Coast, Australia. It'll be even bigger and better. Check it out at bestofaustralianrealestate.com.au.